All right, it's 3 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin with the webinar, I would like to remind everyone here to mute your mic during the session. And if you happen to have any questions during the session, you may write it in the chat box and I shall read it later at the end of the session today. Or if you have any inquiry, you may also ask it directly to the speaker at the end of today's session. All right. Apart from that, we will provide the e-certificate link for the participant before the end of today's webinar. All right. And we will also share the link to our YouTube channel and WhatsApp group. If you happen to want to rewatch or watch again our previous webinar, yeah, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. So please stay tuned for the links to be posted on the chat box later. All right. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon, everyone. Yang berbahagia, Professor Datuk Dr. Imran Hu Abdullah, our distinguished speaker, Mr. Masaki Morisawa, and ladies and gentlemen. All right, welcome to the Malaysian Corpus Research Network monthly webinar, and I am Sri Fitriati, your moderator for today. All right, so the webinar for today will look into the advances in digital humanities, where it allows scholars to make use of exciting new tools to cast wide-ranging nets, helping to identify macro trends and patterns that would have been impossible to find via traditional methods. Hence, Gale Digital Scholar Lab is a new intuitive platform that allows uninitiated users to make full use of cutting-edge text mining technology intuitively without the need of any programming language or special IT skills. So today, we are glad to have Mr. Masaki Morisawa from Gale, part of Cengage Group, in this session, where he will guide us all on how to conduct statistical and natural language analysis on thousands of historical texts, such as newspaper backfiles, government documents, and much, much more. Yeah. So before we begin, let me introduce a little bit about the speaker for today. Mr. Masaki Morisawa is a senior product manager of Gale Asia. In this role, he supports the Gale sales force in areas of product information and training, marketing materials, and technical support. Before joining Gale, Mr. Masaki worked for an antiquarian and academic bookseller in Japan. He studied English literature in Sophia University, Tokyo. So, without further ado, I would like to pass the session to you, Mr. Masaki. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that very kind introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking your time to attend this session. I'm very excited and at the same time a little bit nervous because we have such an excellent audience here today who are obviously much more knowledgeable than myself, but I will try to pretend as best as I can to show you some of the excellent products that we have that might or might not help your institutions in the path of digital humanities. So allow me to share my PowerPoint slides. I hope you are seeing my slides now. And this is the title. I have named it Visualizing the Humanities, and it is subtitled The Gale Digital Scholar Lab. So this will be an introduction to a new platform that we have developed for the digital humanities. And just as Sri mentioned during the introduction, it requires no programming language or coding skills whatsoever. It is a very intuitive platform that allows layperson like myself, I am not a programmer or a coding expert myself, can actually do fairly sophisticated text mining and language analyses using historical texts that were created in our Gale Primary Sources program. So I hope that's interesting, and let me start by introducing our company very briefly. We are a publisher called Gale, and we are a US-based publisher. We publish mainly for the library. And if you stroll around the reference section of your library, you might have actually seen some of our books. We publish things like encyclopedias, literary reference works, but increasingly we publish digitally. We publish ebook versions of such reference works. We collect journals and create aggregated journal databases. We have various subject-specific databases on business, literature, and many other subjects. However, today my focus will be on Gale primary sources, and this is the product line where we digitize historical material, things like historical newspapers, historical books, historical manuscripts, and we digitize them and make them available online to universities and academics. So, today's agenda will be like this. I'll start out by briefly introducing Gale primary sources because this is actually the basis of Gale Digital Scholar Lab. So I'll just give you some very, very quick introduction about what Gale primary sources are. And before I kind of actually introduce the Gale Digital Scholar Lab, I would like to talk about the story of how we got here, how we got involved in the digital humanities, and what was our objectives in creating this new platform called the Digital Scholar Lab. And along the way, I will talk about what we call the 3 challenges of digital humanities and how the Gale Digital Scholar Lab helps to overcome such challenges for many scholars. Then I will actually go online and share my browser and actually try to do a live demonstration of the product with you. And finally, I would like to introduce a short case study of educational applications where the Gale Digital Scholar Lab was actually used in an Introduction to Digital Humanities course in a US university. And I will wrap up and close. So, what are Gale primary sources? Gale Primary Sources is the publishing division within Gale that publishes historical books, newspapers, manuscripts, and many other historical documents. We have done this for more than nearly half a century now, and we have more than 200 or 300, depending on the way you count them, digital collections comprising more than 179 million pages of content. Basically, what we do in Gale Digital Scholar, the Gale Primary Sources is fairly simple. We identify institutions that hold rare collections such as books, manuscripts, or newspapers. They may be world famous institutions like the British Library or National Archives of the UK or the United States, or they might be more kind of specified smaller institutions such as specific regional libraries or university libraries. Either way, after we have identified valuable collections that are worth digitizing, we would discuss with those institutions, agree on a contract, and finally, after we get permission, we will go inside their vault and scan and digitize those valuable historical works. Sometimes we scan directly from the original material like you see here on the screen, or sometimes we might work from microfilm, which is sort of like a black and white photograph, if you're not familiar with microfilm, of historical works. Either way, after we have completed the digitization, we apply a special sauce, and that special sauce is called OCR, or Optical Character Recognition. This is basically the technology that allows computers to read historical text. So by applying OCR, we can, for example, search a keyword like Malacca and find a mention of Malacca from, say, an 18th century book, right in the middle of the book, right in the middle of a paragraph, like you see here on the screen, and even highlight it in green. And this has been a revolutionary technology for many, many scholars because they can find interesting mentions of any keyword from thousands and millions of historical documents and zoom in right to that page and make an interesting discovery. So I mentioned OCR, And actually, during the course of this presentation, I'm going to mention OCR again and again and again. It stands for Optical Character Recognition. So please remember that name, OCR. It's the technology that allows you to search historical text. It basically converts these images of text into searchable text. Okay? So we have created many such products. This has been a very, very successful program for Gale, and Gale Primary Sources continues to produce many, many such products. However, a few years ago, while we were doing such products, we realized that there is a new, different approach to historical material that has been emerging among a new generation of scholars. And that was what we call, well, that is what is called collectively the digital humanities. To give a very, very relevant example, this is Dr. Kat Gupta of the University of Nottingham. And Dr. Gupta has been studying the history of the suffrage movement in the United Kingdom, the suffragettes, so to speak. And Dr. Gupta actually wanted to use the archive of the London Times newspaper, which we have published as the Times Digital Archive. And they wanted to analyze the text contained in the Times Digital Archive where it mentions these suffragettes or the suffrage movements. And they inquired us, is it okay to do such analysis? And we answered, of course you can, because the University of Nottingham has already purchased the Times Digital Archive from us on a perpetual license. So you can just use the Times Digital Archive interface to do whatever searches that make sense to you. That was our initial reply. But Dr. Gupta said, no, that's not exactly what I want to do. Actually, I want to open the hood of your archives and delve inside. More specifically, they wanted to use the full text data that is actually hidden behind these archives. And they wanted access to the original XML coding containing the full text data as well. And that was something new to us. It was not something that we usually did during the time because we were committed to providing access to an online database which had a very clean interface where you can do searches and things like that. But Dr. Gupta wanted access to the original data. So after we did a few negotiations, high-level negotiations, we decided that, okay, the University of Nottingham has already purchased the Times Digital Archive on a perpetual access basis. And for a nominal additional fee, we will provide the XML data, including all of the textual OCR data of the Times Digital Archive in a USB hard drive. It's raw data. It is really up to the doctor to actually make it usable or conduct analyses, but we provided it as a kind of gesture of goodwill. Then, after a long period, Dr. Gupta actually managed to analyze all of this data from the Times newspaper and did some very, very interesting analyses. They identified all of the mentions of the word suffragette, or suffragists, or all its variations, and what kind of adjectives or description words are appearing alongside those words. And they came up with very interesting examples. There are words like militant, breakers, bombs, opposing, outrage, disorder, conspiracy. And by analyzing all of this text in this way, Dr. Gupta was able to demonstrate that the Times newspaper definitely had a negative bias against the suffragette movement because of all of these negative connotations. And we were basically just sitting there and thinking, wow, that's interesting. Another example, this is Professor David McClure of the Stanford Literary Lab. He wanted access to the American fiction collection that we had published. This is a collection of more than 27,000 early American novels published in the United States, including many famous and non-famous works. And again, after a few negotiations, we agreed that, okay, Stanford has already purchased the product, so we can provide the hard drive containing all of the full text and metadata as well. And Dr. McClure took that hard drive, took it apart and cleaned it up and did a lot of analyses and was able to find the occurrence of key terms within all of these 27,000 novels. For example, this graph here shows how frequently the word athletic appears in all of these novels. And this left-hand side stands for the beginning of every novel. And this right-hand side stands for the end of every novel. So it shows that athletic, the word athletic, tends to appear more frequently at the beginning of a novel and kind of decreases towards the end. Another interesting example would be death. Death appears less frequently at the beginning of the novels, but more frequently towards the end of the novel, which kind of makes sense. Maybe a lot of the heroes of these novels are athletic and really jumpy and, happy at the beginning, but they face a lot of obstacles, and obviously at the end they all die. Of course, that's an simplification, but it was nonetheless a very, very interesting analysis. And again, we just sat there and said, wow. So after we got such inquiries by many professors, and every time we kind of provided the hard drive containing all of these full texts behind our databases, we kind of just realized that this is a very different workflow from what we had expected when we produced these products initially. So basically, our Gale Primary Sources products are based on what we call the search and retrieve workflow. So the user is expected to do a keyword search on any keyword. It could be a word like Thailand. And then they would retrieve a list of results, open one of them, and they would actually look at the real image of the historical document, and they were actually expected to read it on the screen. So it was more like a discovery tool of historical documents. Once you open a document, you are expected to read it the traditional way on the screen. On the other hand, what these new generations of scholars were doing was they weren't necessarily reading every single document one by one. Instead, they were actually gathering all of this text from behind the servers, basically, of our products, gathering it and applying all of these sophisticated algorithms to do kind of macro level analyses, statistical analyses, or natural language processing analyses to analyze these content from a sort of a bird's eye view of the content, what they call distant reading in some circles. And we thought this was very, very intriguing. However, one kind of part that kind of bugged us was that they were using our data, but kind of not using our interface or our product. They were actually going behind our product and just using the raw data. And that troubled us a little bit. So we thought, how can we address this issue? And we started talking to many of these digital humanities scholars and asking them, what are the biggest challenges that you face in doing this kind of research? What are problems that are perhaps solvable by a publisher like us? And gradually, after listening to many, many digital humanities practitioners, we were able to identify what we call the three big challenges of the digital humanities. So, the three challenges. Number one, this was repeatedly mentioned by many scholars. Challenge number one was access to relevant data in an optimized format. So, getting access to data, this textual data to analyses itself was always a challenge. It's not like data, big corpuses of data are just lying around there ready to be opened. And even when they are available, there are complex issues of permissions, of copyright, and even after clearing that, all of those intellectual property obstacles, there was always a problem that all of those different sets of data will be in different formats. One might be in Microsoft Word, one might be in a textual format, one might be in XML, and they would have different metadata structures, different kind of ways that they were created. So most of their time actually went into simply cleaning up that data and optimizing it for analyses, making it analysis ready. So this is an interesting kind of figure that was shown by one of these digital humanities practitioners, and they say that 80% of your time is for data cleanup, another 80% for algorithms, which doesn't quite add up, but you get the idea. So much time is spent in simply optimizing that data. Challenge number 2 was a bit of a surprise to us. Hosting all of that data in servers was actually a challenge. And this is not a technical challenge. This is more of a bureaucracy challenge. For instance, Dr. Kat Gupta in the University of Nottingham, after she finally got the hard drive USB from us, it took them many months actually to simply get a copy of that data installed in their university servers, because they had to ask many different divisions in the university for permission, and they would ask the technical division and they would say, no, this is not for us. Please ask the administrative division, because this is probably an administrative question. And the administrators would say, oh, no, this is technical. Go to the technical division. And it took them many, many months just to figure out how to get permission to simply upload that data into their university servers so they can start analyzing. And it was even more difficult to agree upon how to maintain that data and identify who is responsible for updating and keeping that data alive for the future. So just hosting that data, which sounds like something very simple, was actually a complex question to solve. And finally, challenge number 3 was not a surprise at all. A lot of these analyses were conducted using fairly complex algorithms. A lot of these scholars who do these kind of things are very rare species who are both very well versed in traditional humanities research and also very, very technically sophisticated. They can write algorithms, they can write code, they know how to code in various programming languages like Java or Perl or other programming languages. And it's quite difficult for an average humanities scholars, even if they are very, very well read and respected in their individual disciplines, to make that big dive into the digital humanities. So those were the 3 challenges that we identified. And we gradually came up with this picture of what we call the 1990 rule. The 1990 rule actually was not invented by us. It's a common internet slang that is referring to the participation in any online community. So if you go to a social network, maybe 1% of the people in that network are the actual heavy contributors that are contributing a lot of content. 9% are intermittent contributors, and the rest are just lurkers. They don't contribute content, but they're merely lurking there and looking at what the others, the 10%, are doing. And we thought this kind of applies as well to the digital humanities world, where only 1% of the entire community are those really, really rare people who can actually have the technical acumen and the humanities background within the same person, and also have resources to those various data and the technical resources that are necessary to do that kind of analyses. Maybe 9% of the people are lucky people who are in universities like Stanford or other places where they can easily create a kind of a team of scholars where they team up people who are adept in the humanities with technical people and do various projects among those teams. And perhaps 90% of the humanities um, community are kind of interested in this new trend, but they cannot make the big leap because of the technical obstacles. So we decided to come up with a new solution, which is the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. So back to the two different workflows. The search and retrieve workflow, our traditional workflow, was very well served by our Gale Primary Sources platform, which has been in existence for many years now, and we have been improving. And this is, of course, still important to the majority of our users. However, we realized that we needed a different platform for the new workflow, which was the gather and analyze workflow. And this became the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. So basically, the data behind these two platforms are almost the same. I say almost because there are small differences, which I will explain later, but basically the data behind them are the same. But the way in which users interact with that data is very, very different. So the Gale Digital Scholar Lab is what we call our cloud-based text and data mining research environment for Gale primary sources. So we allow users to access the original OCR or HTR. HTR is actually handwritten text recognition, which is a similar technology as OCR, except that it applies to handwritten text, which we have been applying to some of our more recent products. We allow users to access the OCR and HTR text from their purchased Gale primary sources using this platform. And they can build their own custom content subsets by selecting the documents within their Gale primary sources and basically create their own corpuses. And they can also apply cleaning tools, which are built into the platform to reduce or control noise within the OCR text. And finally, they can analyze with simple but powerful tools, but without any necessity of coding or programming skills. If you can use a keyboard and if you can use a mouse, basically you are ready to use the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. And after you have finished analyzing, you can export your analyses into standard formats, or you can even export the original OCR text as well in standard formats. And it's all cloud-based, so your data stays in the cloud, all of your history stays in the cloud, and it's very, very easy to organize and manage your research. And basically, the Gale Digital Scholar Lab solves the three challenges that I mentioned. Namely, it allows access to relevant data in an already optimized format. All of the data within the Gale Digital Scholar Lab is already unified in the same optimized format. It is cloud-based, entirely cloud-based, so you don't have to worry about where to host that data, where to keep that data, or maintain everything that you did. And finally, we offer access to powerful tools, but they are made very, very easy to use and intuitively. So, what can be done using the Gale Digital Scholar Lab? When I explain the Gale Digital Scholar Lab, I usually divide it in these three different workflows. And it's actually these workflows appear in the product itself. Later, when I actually go live into the product, you will see these three icons. So there are basically three steps. The first step is to build your corpus, build your content set, as we call it. You do a search, you identify the documents that you want to include in your content set, and basically you give it a name and create your own content set for analyses. The next step is to set cleaning options. There is a built-in OCR cleaning tool in the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. This is a kind of an optional step. You can actually skip the step if you're not sure what you want to do here. We already have a default cleaning applied if you do not specify your cleaning options, so you can skip this step if you want to. But once you set your cleaning options, you will be ready to actually do your analyses and download your analyses results as well. Actually, it's when you actually start to use the Digital Scholar Lab, you will quickly realize that it's not so simple as it seems. After you do an analysis, you might look at the results and say, this is kind of confusing. There's too much noise in my analyses. Maybe I need to go back and tweak the cleaning options. Maybe I need to reduce some of the noise. Or maybe you look at the analysis and say, my content set was not really good for my purposes. Maybe the content set was too small, or maybe it was too big. It contained too much irrelevant content. I might actually go back and tweak my content set and try again. So actually, it's more of like a circular workflow. But basically, this is the way you interact with the data in the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. So starting with a build workflow, basically all of the Gale primary source databases that we have published are available for inclusion in the lab. Now, I say available for inclusion because your institution must actually purchase each of these databases on a perpetual access database, perpetual access basis in order to actually analyze them in the lab. So not everything is actually ready for everybody. Only the archives that your institution has purchased will be available in the lab, but all of these are potentially available in your lab experience, depending on what your university or institution has decided to purchase. And this is a lot. Actually, it's actually easier to explain which archives that are not available. And only a few archives that we have published under the Gale Primary Sources program are not currently available in the lab. The reasons are varied. Sometimes it's simply because these might be manuscript collections where we don't have textual data to analyze. Sometimes the platform is a little bit different from the other products, so we haven't yet integrated them into the same platform where it becomes easy to analyze in the same way. Or sometimes there are language barriers like the Arabic books, or sometimes it's simply a matter of permission. The Financial Times is one content set that we have been dying to include into the Digital Scholar Lab, but the Financial Times company would not say yes. They will say, we can allow you to search and retrieve, but no textual mining, please. So we have to respect that decision, and so on and so forth. But it's only a short list that's not available. And additionally, a lot of Digital Scholar Lab users have been asking us, it's great that we can analyze the Gale primary sources that you already have, but how about analyzing content that we created? So we have actually added a content upload feature where a user can upload or manually enter text in TXT format and create content sets by uploading their content. It's important to note, however, that users are responsible for copyright and rights clearance in those cases because we cannot be responsible for any infringements that are done by our users. So that's one important point to remember. However, there is a content upload feature as well. Then on the cleaning options, we have a built-in OCR cleaning tool. We already have a minimum default cleaning that is automatically applied if you don't specify your cleaning options. If you specify your cleaning options, you can test run them and see if they are working. And any configurations that you create within the lab will be saved in your personal accounts for reuse in the future. And why clean? It's because OCR text is always not perfect. This is a very good example. This is OCR text of this newspaper article shown here in light blue. And you would notice there are a lot of nonsensical symbols at the beginning. And this is actually because the OCR machine was actually trying to read this picture here. And it was obviously struggling because there were no text to read here. So they came up with these strange symbols. And even among the actual article, although this is a fairly clean text, there are mistakes that the OCR machine might make. So the cleaning tool allows users to decide what kinds of symbols or patterns to remove from the text or replace with other words in order to achieve a more cleaner result. And finally, the analyses tools. We have 6 different analyses tools that are built into the lab. And this is a list of all 6 of them. I will explain them in more detail in the following slides. But basically, you would notice that many of these are open source programs or tools, libraries. And this is because we asked the digital humanities community when we were creating this Digital Scholar Lab for feedback, and they mentioned that please try to use open source tools as much as possible for the sake of transparency. Because if you create an obscure tool that nobody can really know what's going on inside, like a black box, I can present a very interesting analysis to you, but you might ask, how did you arrive at that analysis? What are the tools that you use? And if those tools are not available for inspection by other scholars, basically your analysis is worthless. So for the sake of transparency, the community has asked us to use open source tools as much as possible. However, open source does mean that you can actually use these sources without using the Digital Scholar Lab. For example, the mallet tool is a tool that you can actually Google and find on the open web, and you can download the mallet tool and install it into your computer if you'd like to, without using the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. However, the problem is when using the mallet tool, you probably need to learn programming knowledge. You probably need to use a programming language. I think it was Python or Java, I forgot which one, but you need to learn that language to actually use the mallet tool. And it's a very, very complex interface, and you need to learn a lot of programming commands, and it is simply not so easy to use. What we did was we took these open source libraries and programs and made them into an intuitive experience within the lab. So I'd start out with the first tool, which is Ngram. If you're not familiar with Ngram, this term might sound a bit scary. When I first encountered Ngram, I thought, oh no, this is not, I better look for a new job. This is not for me. But actually it's a fairly simple concept. Basically, it is a tool that counts words or phrases. So if you had a sentence like, nobody in Singapore drinks Singapore slings, if you divide them into N1 unigram, each of these words will be N unigrams. If you divide them into bigrams, each of these 2-word phrases, like nobody in Singapore, Singapore drinks, will become bigrams, and so forth. And the user specifies the length of the n-gram. And basically the tool will look into all of the words in your content set and count which are the most frequently appearing words and phrases. And it will come up with a bar graph like this. I think this was a content set on Indonesia. I think it was a collection of Indonesia-related newspaper articles. And the top n-gram, I think I specified the n-gram to be bigrams. So each of these are 2-word phrases. And the top one was United States, followed by New Guinea. And you can inspect any of these n-grams and look into which content sets or which documents they came from and inspect the details. The second tool is called Named Entity Recognition, or NER. This tool recognizes basically proper names, as well as dates and prices and things like that, numbers. So proper names and numbers, like names of people, names of countries, names of religions, names of political groups, organizations, or dates or numbers or prices and things like that. And it will look for all of these things in your entire content set and return them to you like this. So this was, I think, an analysis on a collection of United States government documents related to Japan. So it returns all of these geopolitical entities like Japan. Okinawa is a place name in Japan, the United States, Korea, China, and it will show you how many times it appears in your content set and how many documents. And you can further inspect the details of each of these. The third tool, the clustering tool, basically looks at all of your documents. You might have 400 documents in your content set, for example, and it calculates the distance between each of those documents. Distance is a kind of abstract way of saying how similar are each of these documents to each other. And it will come up with a mathematical equivalent of that distance, and it will map it into a two-dimensional field like this. So each of these dots or nodes are the documents. So if the documents are very, very close to each other on the map, they are kind of similar in content. If they are far apart, they are dissimilar. And in this way, you can create a number of clusters from your content set and analyze it that way. The fourth tool is called the sentiment analysis. And this tool calculates the sentiment score of each document, or in short, how happy or positive is this document, or how sad or mad or negative is this document. And it gives a sentiment score to each document, which would then be mapped like this. So the greener field is the more positive field, and each of these dots are documents, and the redder part is the more negative part. And even within each document, we divide each document into 20 equal sections, and we actually calculate the sentiment score in each of those sections as well. The topic modeling tool is a very interesting tool. It analyzes your documents and tries to identify what are the topics that are appearing again and again in your entire content set. And the interesting thing is that it will return those topics as a list of keywords. It won't name the topic. It won't say that this topic is about unemployment, for example. It will just might identify keywords like workers, jobs, frustration, or something like that. And the user would look at those keywords and decide, what is this topic standing for? And it will return results like this. So it will just say topic 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, etc. And for each topic, it will return a number of keywords that are closely related to each topic. For example, this one says Hong Kong dollar currency markets bank. So this might be a financial cluster, for example. And this says film, music, event, art. So this may be an art cluster for a cluster, art topic, for example. And you can do various analyses based on those. Or you can look at the proportion of each topic within your entire content set and see how each topic is appearing in your content set in a very colorful graph like this. And finally, we have the parts of speech tagger, which looks at grammatical properties within your document. So these are things like nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and how frequently those are used in your documents. And you can compare different authors, like this is Daniel Defoe against Jonathan Swift. And you can see how frequently adverbs or nouns or verbs or adjectives are used by these authors in any given content set. Okay, so those were the 6 analysis tools. After you conduct your analyses, you can download your results in data formats or visual formats, or if you are a programming kind of person, we also allow you to download in JSON format, which is for the programmer as well. And you can actually also download the content set itself. Although there is a limitation, we have to impose a limitation of maximum 5,000 documents per session, but you can still download those content sets locally. And this is for the more sophisticated user who may have their own analysis tools. They might rather use the Digital Scholar Lab as a corpus creating tool and download the OCR and actually do their analysis using their own tools locally. You can do that. This is not able for, this function is not enabled for trials because we need to protect our data. But once you purchase the content set and get the Digital Scholar Lab, you can actually download the OCR text up to 5,000 documents per session as well. And all of your tool setups and your run history are preserved in the cloud. So you can return to your analyses and rerun historical analyses that you did and revisit your previous configurations, compare and contrast different results very easily because everything is saved under your personal account. So finally, we get to the demonstration part. And for the demonstration, I selected a topic that I thought might be of interest to our audience today because you are from Malaysia. One disclaimer before I start, I am not well versed in Malaysian history. This is a random topic that I discovered and I did a very, very quick study on the topic, but I do not pretend to know your history better than you do. So please bear with me when I do this demonstration. I might make mistakes or might be totally ignorant, and I have no political affiliation or any bias about this particular topic. But I chose the Malayan emergency, which was right after World War II and lasted for 12 years, where basically the Malayan Communist Party did an insurgency against British rule in this time and was a very, very turbulent period in early Malaysian history. And of course, the Times, the London Times newspaper, being the leading British newspaper at the time, and still today it is, they had a lot of coverage on these events in the Times newspaper, obviously because it's a British newspaper and it was of British interest. So I thought it might be interesting if we selected 1,400 news articles during this period which mention Malay or Malaya in the title of the article and create a corpus from that and apply these 6 tools or 5 different tools and see what happens. So I will actually go into the, oops, I need to figure out how to, excuse me, I'm not very used to using Google. Okay. I hope you're seeing my browser now. Let me know if you're not. So this is the actual live product, and this is the Digital Scholar Lab. I'm going to refresh my screen because I could have been logged out while I've been speaking. Okay. And once you log into the Gale Digital Scholar Lab from your institution, you will see this screen. And you still can't do anything, any analyses here because you have to further log in using a personal account. So you click on Login or Create Account. And basically you have 2 different options. You either sign in with your Google account or you sign in with your Microsoft account. And most people, I think, would have either of these, or some people might have both. And if you don't, you can easily go to the Google website or just do the Microsoft website to create a free Google or Microsoft account. The important thing is once you select an account, be it Google or Microsoft, stick with the same account when you re-log in the next time. Don't log in with Google the first time and try to re-log in with Microsoft the next time and expect to see your items all saved there because they are separate accounts. So I am going to log in with my Microsoft account. And the first time you do this, of course, it will ask you permissions. Is it okay? Blah, blah, blah. And you have to agree to those terms and conditions. But once you do that, everything is very, very easy and seamless. And I am now signed in as myself under my Microsoft account. And this is the proper Digital Scholar Lab homepage. You would notice the 3 basic steps that I mentioned. Build your content set, clean texture for computational analysis, analyze content. And if you scroll further down, we have lots and lots of help files because we realize that this is a fairly sophisticated process and some users might not be as comfortable as we hope for. So we have a lot of videos and we have an entire section called the Learning Center, which basically walks the user through each of these steps. And we have lots of video instructions and examples, or even sample content sets that they can use to practice their analyses. But I am already familiar with all of this, so I'll go into the build section where I can actually start building my content set. There are two basic ways to build your content set. You can either search what is already available to you from the Gale Primary Sources Vault, or you can upload your own content set by uploading here. I'm going to do a search, and instead of just doing a simple search, I'm going to go to advanced search because I want to be more specific in my search. So this is advanced search, and I am first of all going to select the database to search. I'm going to deselect everything here, and I am only interested in the Times Digital Archive, which is the London Times newspaper archive. Go back up, and I'm going to search for Malay. And I'm going to do something a little bit nerdy here. I'm going to add an asterisk, and this allows me to actually search all of the variations that begin with Malay, including the word Malay, Malay, Malaya, Malaysia, Malaysian, etc., everything in single search. And instead of keyword, I'm going to just limit to the document title. So I want only the newspaper articles that actually mentioned Malay, Malaya, or Malaysia in the article's title. Okay. And I'm also going to limit by year because I'm interested in the Malayan emergency. So I'm going to go by 1948. Starting date 1948. And down to 1960. Oops. Okay. And I shall execute my search. And I have 1,600 articles, newspaper articles for my search results. And I have various filters here on the right-hand side, so I can filter further. For example, I might not really be interested in including the sports news or the stock table. I might not even include the letters to the editors. I might only be interested in the articles themselves. So I'm going to limit them to the articles. And this looks like an interesting set. Maybe I'll take a look at some of these examples. So I'm going to open one of these documents to show you how it looks like. And this says RAF Raid Camp in Malaya. And it gives me a split screen display like this one. And actually, the right-hand side is the OCR text of this article. And the left-hand side is the page image. And if I kind of scroll a little bit here, you see this little section that is highlighted in light blue. This is the actual article that I'm viewing right now. Whenever we digitize a newspaper like this, we actually segment each of these individual articles into individual items. So this part is what you're seeing here on the right-hand side. And this is the OCR text. I might enlarge it a little bit more. And you will see that the OCR text is fairly good. Okay, the OCR confidence here says 94%, and this is sometimes misunderstood. This does not mean that the OCR text here is 94% correct. The OCR confidence is rather a sort of a self-score number given by the OCR program when it does each of these OCR operations. And the OCR program, after it converts everything into text, would self-score itself and say, I think, of course, the program doesn't speak, but pretending the program has a personality, it's like the OCR program is saying, I think I got this one pretty much good. I think I nailed this one. So I'm going to give it 94%. It could or could be wrong, could be wrong or right, but it does not actually mean that this text is 94% correct. But it is a kind of a measure to see how accurate or how confident the OCR machine was in digitizing this particular text. So maybe I think this is good enough. I want to include this into my content set. I will click on Add to Content Set. I'm going to give a new content set a name. I'm going to call it the Malayan emergency, and maybe I'll add demo and create my content set. So now one document was added to my content set. But of course, one document is really not enough for your analyses. You might want to add more, so I'll go back to the search result. And I could select one by one, looking at each document. And in a real life scenario, you probably wouldn't like to spend lots and lots of time looking at and weeding your content set. But because this is a demo, I'm going to be very quick. I'm going to select everything. And I'm not even selecting just the first 100 results that are shown on this page. I'm going to select everything all at once. I trust the algorithm, and add to my content set, which is, oops, I thought I created a content set right now. Strange. Let me create again. Rayan emergency demo 2. Maybe because I opened the article in a separate window, so that was the reason I wasn't seeing my content set right here. Okay, so I have added all of these documents to a content set named Malayan Emergency Demo, and I can view my content set. Right here. I think this is the one that I just created. And if I wish to, I can further examine my content set. I can look at what is the search history that I use to arrive at these contents, and I can look at each of the documents and examine them further. Maybe I think, oh, this one does not belong. I might remove it. I might apply a few more filters, or like look into the languages, et cetera, and examine it further until I'm satisfied with my content set. And once I'm satisfied with my content set, I can go to the cleaning options part. And this part is optional. You don't have to do this if you're not sure how to do it. At the beginning, I would actually recommend that you skip this step, but just for your information, you can actually set things like stop words. We have a standard stop words list, and these are stop words are basically words that are supposed to be ignored in your analyses. They are words like the, about, above. They're too common in the English language, so usually users remove them from the analyses to avoid seeing a lot of thes and ahs in their analyses. But you can change that as well. If you want to include you can just delete that from your stop word set, or you can add other words, like if you don't want Malay or Malaya to appear in this particular analyses because it's too obviously related to Malay, I can do that as well. Okay, and once you create, I might add back you create this particular stop word set, and I might actually add them to the beginning so I remember what I added. I can save it as a new configuration. Okay, I might add Malay configuration or whatever makes sense to you. Okay, and you can further tweak with the configuration, like do you want to ignore case, everything in uppercase, or remove extended ASCII characters, or et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And once you create this configuration, it will be saved and you can apply it to your analyses. And once you're satisfied with your cleaning options, you can go to the Analyze tool, which is really the most fun part of the analyses. And here you can add the various analyses tools that you want to apply. So I might want to do document clustering, n-grams, parts of speech, etc., etc. Maybe I'll just add everything. And once you add the tools, you can now run them. You can run them all at once if you're not really into doing a lot of detailed tweaking, or you can go into Edit and specify what you want. There are some options depending on each tool. For example, for the clustering tool, you can specify the number of clusters. Maybe I want 5 clusters, and I'm going to name this run 5 clusters. And I can just stick with a default cleaning configuration, or I can use the Malay configuration that I just created and run my analyses. And this will actually take a few minutes, and depending on the size of your content tool, content set, and depending on the complexity of the tool that you're using. So right now it's still running, but I'm going to actually cheat a little bit and actually show you an analysis that I already did before this demonstration, just to save time and also show you the results quickly. Sorry, this is like a cooking program, but this is a very similar analysis using the same content set that I just created. And I have done all these different tools. For example, the clustering tool is here. And this looks at all of these 1,400 news documents, and it will see that it will calculate the distance between each of those documents. And you would see, you could look over here and move your mouse around, and you would notice that this part here contains a lot of documents on rubber. Obviously, rubber was a very important industry in Malaysia. It continues to be, I guess, but especially during this period, the British were really interested in keeping the colony because rubber was such a valuable asset to them. So there's a lot of articles on rubber, for example. And you can look at each of these in more detail if you want to, like this. Okay. And you can look at other clusters within this document. Oops, to close this. And here you can scroll your mouse around, and there's a lot of documents on terrorism over here, for instance, or maybe you might move around here, and there are more documents around military measures and political issues and so forth. And this is the way you can kind of look at a really bird's eye view of your content set. I might go back to the analyses page and look at named entities. And this is the tool that extracts proper nouns and names and numbers from your content set. And they categorize them into different categories. I might look at each category, or for example, I might zoom into people that appear in these 1,400 plus documents. And this is a tool, this is a natural language processing tool. So it's not what sometimes people mistake. This is not checking your content set against a finite list of people or countries or things like that. It is actually looking into the sentence structure and analyzing that sentence structure to decide this is probably a proper name or a person's name. And sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't get it right. For example, Malaya is obviously not a name of a person, but Abdul Rahman is. Gerald Templer definitely is, and Littleton probably is as well. And you can click on any of these and see where they are appearing within your 1,400 document sets. And maybe I might be interested in this one that says Gerald Templer appears 3 times, and actually examine that document as well. And this is very interesting because it will show you the OCR text with all of those named entities colored within your content set. And Gerald Templer is mentioned 3 times, so I can just click on these and quickly go to the places where Gerald Templer person is mentioned and see if it's correct, for example. Other tools that might be interesting. The sentiment analysis tool is also very interesting. This will calculate how positive or negative each document is, and each of these are documents. And the greener the area, the more positive the documents are, the redder the area, more negative. So you can even look at the titles like Award for Gallantry in Malaya. Gallantry in Malaya. So obviously the contents of these documents are very positive. You can go to the negative side and 10 policemen killed in Malaya, 12 deaths in Malayan ambush. So you can even judge by the titles of these articles that, yeah, they seem to be negative and positive. But the important thing to note is that this tool is not just looking at the article titles. It's looking at the entire text of those articles. And you can even select a document and see within this particular document entitled Gallantry in Malaya, it actually divides the article into 12 equal sections and sees which sections are positive, which sections are negative, for example. So this part in this document is rather negative. The beginning part is very positive, for example. So you can even look at it from that micro level as well. Okay. And perhaps one more tool before I go back into the PowerPoint. The topic modeling tool is also a very interesting one. I have told this tool to return to me 10 topics from my content set. And each of these topics are not given names, but they're just given numbers, but they are associated with certain keywords. So for example, topic 0 is associated with the keywords like air, royal, Malaya, regiment, battalion, force, service, aircraft. And I can look at these keywords, or I can look at phrases that are related to these and decide that maybe topic 0 is about the Air Force, for example. I just save this, and the topic 0 becomes Air Force. Number 2, the second topic, topic 1, it says rubber, tin, Malayan industry tons. So maybe topic 1 is rubber and tin. I'm doing this very quickly, but obviously in a real life scenario, you need to look at things much more carefully. I'll just do maybe a few more. Politics and Malaya, example, and communists. And British politics. Okay, and once you do that, you can actually look at the distribution of these topics among sample documents. So you can see that the Air Force topic appears only a little bit in this one, and maybe British politics appears a little bit more in this one. Communists appears in this one at this proportion, and so on and so forth. Or you can look at each of these topics and see which topics are more unique and isolated from others, or which topics kind of overlap with the others. You can look at, for example, the communist topic, and it says this has an exclusivity of 0.552, and you can compare this with another topic like topic number 5, which has a larger exclusivity score, and this one says university, state head, etc. So maybe this is an educational cluster, and this is a kind of a more unique topic that does not overlap with the other topics, for example. So that's the way you can actually look into these. And for each of these analyses, you can download the results in pictorial format, or as well as table format as well. So I think I shall return back to my slides. Excuse me. So to kind of summarize the workflow, the build part is where you search and create your content set. By the way, I didn't mention this, but each content set can contain up to 10,000 documents per content set. And you have your complete search history. You can even duplicate or merge multiple content sets together. Or alternatively, you can upload your own text and analyze them that way. The cleaning tool has default cleaning options, or you can set your own cleaning preferences, edit stop words, remove special characters, etc., and save those configurations for later use. And finally, the analyze part. You can run analyses on the fly. It only takes a few minutes. Typically, we have 6 different tools for different purposes, and you can download the output visually or tabularly, or as I mentioned, you can also download the original OCR text, up to 5,000 items per content set per session. And we save all of your run histories. And this is very important because when you actually do this, you typically try different kinds of analyses with different setups. And maybe you think, oh, analysis number 3 was actually the best one. You can always go back to your history and rerun analysis number 3 and save it as your best analysis as well. So, finally, I would like to share you an example of a university that actually used the Digital Scholar Lab in an educational setting and had great successes as well. So this is from the University of Washington. This is Dr. Sarah Ketchley, and she is actually one of our advisors with this product as well, but she is a digital humanities scholar who is a specialist in Egyptology. And she taught a course at the University of Washington for multiple undergraduate and graduate groups from multiple departments called Introduction to Digital Humanities. And at the beginning, she didn't have the Digital Scholar Lab. She just had her own tools and own texts and own platforms. And what she realized was there were many problems. First of all, too much time was spent on technical troubleshooting. The students would arrive with different tablets, some might arrive with a Mac iPad, for example. Another might arrive with a Windows desktop machine. Another might arrive with a phone. And they all have different environments. And each tool and platform that Dr. Ketchley would introduce had a unique learning curve. And sometimes a whole hour of the class was just spent in installing software and troubleshooting that installation because one student couldn't get the software to run correctly. Another student could get the tool to run correctly, but wasn't seeing the same screen as the lecturer, and so forth. So in short, too much time was spent on the digital part of digital humanities, and not enough time was spent on the humanities part. So in the autumn of 2018, she started to use the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. And I've already explained this to you. It's a single solution for corpus building, data curation, analysis, and visualization. It's cloud-based, so there's no installation necessary, no compatibility issues. And the great thing for Dr. Ketchley was the focus of her lecture quickly shifted from the technical part of getting things to run correctly, from that to actually developing research questions and presenting the research results. And the students actually enjoyed this. This is actually a real life result by one of our students groups who used newspaper articles from the United States to analyze evolving attitudes towards Chinese food in the US. And this is actually a website that they created where they presented their results. And what was even greater was, after the whole course of the lecture, the professor Ketchley asked her students to identify what kind of skills, what did you think you learned from this entire course? What were the skills that you think you were able to get through this course? And they answered things like, I learned how to think critically. I learned how to reason analytically and communicate effectively. But they also, apart from those kind of soft skills, they also mentioned that I think I have a knowledge about how to deal with data wrangling, or I'm more confident to manage projects, or confident in writing in different formats for different purposes, or interpreting data, or collaborating as a team. And as you would quickly realize, all of these skills, these are really, really generic and traveling skills that will be useful in any kind of future job or workforce. And a lot of hirers would look at these and really raise eyebrows and think, oh, these are the kinds of students that I would want to have in my corporation as well. So it was really, really a great success as the students saw great value as they transitioned toward a life beyond the university. Okay. And to make it even easier for students, we have actually built a learning center within the product itself so students can view videos and look at various cases to learn further on their own as well. So just to kind of summarize my talk, this is the final part. The Gale Digital Scholar Lab is our cloud-based text and data mining research environment. It gives you access to these OCR texts from Gale primary sources, or you can upload your own text. You can build your own custom content subsets. You can apply various cleaning configurations to reduce or control noise. And you can analyze everything with very simple but powerful tools without the need to learn any programming or coding. You can export your results and organize and manage your research on the cloud. So I hope that was helpful or interesting, and I would like to open the floor to any questions or comments. And I realize that my colleague, Mr. Chantia, has already been answering some questions from
Yes,
the audience.
all right. I think if the floor has any questions, right? First of all, I would like to say, of course, thank you so much, Mr. Masaki,
Oh,
for a
thank
very insightful session. I believe it is very beneficial, yeah, for all of us who are active researchers to know more about the Gale Digital Scholar Lab. Now, for the members, all right, or for those who are who are present today, if you do have any questions that you would like to ask to Mr. Masaki, please do so. Let's check the chat box right here. We do have questions from the chat box. How are pictorial data dealt within Gale? Can the digital scholar analyze images? This is from Miss Nurhanis binti Hazman.
Thank you very much for your question, Ms. Nuharnis. That's a very, very interesting question. Right now, the Gale Digital Scholar Lab is exclusively a text analysis tool, so we are limited to analyzing text, but we have heard that feedback more than once, so this is possibly a direction we might consider in the future. I think that's a very, very intriguing idea.
Yeah, I guess it is because right now we're doing a lot of multimodal analysis as well, which
I
involve
see.
images, yeah,
Mhm,
pictures. So it will be great if we do have
mhm,
picture to be, to be analyzed as well. All
mhm,
right. So the next question is from Mr. Hui Gang. How
mhm.
many documents can be uploaded?
Oh, yes. For the uploading part,
Mhm.
I think there is a limitation of 10 megabytes of text. I don't think the number of documents in each content set has an upper limit of 10,000 documents. And for the uploading feature, uh, you can upload up to 10 megabytes of TXT files. That's quite a lot, actually. But
Nice.
I have to warn you that the uploading feature is a rather manual process. It can be, it can be a bit cumbersome at times, but it is possible to do that.
Nice.
However, users are responsible for copyright and text analysis rights clearance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Thank you. Oh, we do have a question from Dr. Siti Aisha. All right. So I'm just going to, yeah.
Mhm.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Masaki, for a very interesting explanation about the project.
You're welcome.
I felt like, in short, it gives you a lot of detailed analysis, but in a simpler view. Because it goes to my first question: how different are you with other products out there, like
Mhm.
Sketch Engine? It does remind me a lot about Sketch Engine.
Mhm. I am not actually familiar with Sketch Engine, but one of the different points about our analysis tools is that it already has the content from our Gale primary sources that is already available for analyses. A lot of the various tools that are available on the web, actually, it is the user's responsibility to gather the content for analyses and to clear the rights for analyses as well. But the great thing about the Gale Digital Scholar Lab is all of those are the content sets themselves are already ready for analyses. And it really, it's actually because back to the three obstacles of digital humanities, just getting that content set ready for analyses has been a really big pain point for a lot of researchers. So having that data ready has been a really, really big plus for us. And I think it's really been positively received by our community.
Right. I think that is the if not your strongest point as a
Mm-hmm,
publisher, publishing company,
mm-hmm,
having that affiliated universities, institutions that already are using your repositories.
mm-hmm,
Those are really great. It's a question about, how much would that cost though? Because there's a lot of data, a lot of sharing going on online.
mm-hmm,
Yes, you have shown some that are not available due to
mm-hmm,
certain restrictions.
mm-hmm,
So I was just, trying to think about my own institution and whether
mm-hmm,
we have any subscription with you, because if we
mm-hmm,
don't, that would be very poor, very unfortunate. But
mm-hmm,
yeah, on that note, um, my second question just, are offline analysis possible? That's another thing that other
mm-hmm,
corpus tools can
mm-hmm,
provide, and
mm-hmm.
whether yours can do that too.
This is a strictly a text cloud-based tool, so the analyses need to be conducted online. However, you don't need to have the tool open for the entire uh, while as it processes of the analyses. Sometimes, depending on the size of your corpus or the complexity of the tool, it can take a bit more than a few minutes. But you can just send your analyses to the tool and then close your window and re-log in maybe a few moments, a few coffees later, and log in as yourself and see the analysis done. So that way, I think it's very convenient.
Thanks for your time.
Mhm. Thank you so much for your questions.
All right, Mr. Masaki, I think we have two more questions right here. All
Mhm.
right. So the
Yes,
first
sure.
one is, if we were to upload our corpus into the system to conduct the analysis,
Mhm.
will it be protected from other people? I think it means that no other people can take a look at the data that we have or the data that we are analyzing. Is it
Yes, that is correct. The analyses will be conducted in your own personal login only,
true? Mhm.
so other people will not be able to see your data if it's your original data that has been uploaded.
All right. Okay. And the final question is, can the OCR cleaning tool be
Mhm.
applied to uploaded content sets as well?
Yes, it can be.
All right. Okay. So I think those are the questions that we have for Mr. Masaki Morisawa. All right.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Mr. Masaki and everyone. Oh, hold on a second.
Mhm.
Sorry, yes,
Another question from the other speaker. Yeah,
I
all right.
just remembered, on behalf of those who are really interested with your slides, are they available to us, to
Oh,
MCRN?
yes. I'll be very, very happy to share my slides.
Thank you very much for that. And we will, like the speaker has said, we will be giving that out along with the recording of the video today for everyone watching. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I would just like to mention that Mr. Shantia, the gentleman sitting in his room, is actually our Gale representative for Malaysia. So any questions about quotations and prices and things like that, please feel free to contact Mr. Chia.
All right.
Okay.
Can I, yeah, Priyati?
Yes, Prof. You may.
Yeah, I just want to mention that at
Mhm.
UKM, we have actually run the trial for the the Gale Digital Scholar Lab.
Thank you very much.
With our corpus linguistic class.
Mhm.
And I think there are very interesting feedback. Yeah,
Mhm.
multimodality is definitely one of the issues.
Mhm.
But I also find that this is a very useful tool, because if you can load in all the academic journals database, yeah, a particular, say for example, in the field of linguistics, and I can actually perform searches, which then leads me to a systematic literature review on the particular title as well. So apart from doing the proper research, yeah, on digital humanities, it is also a very useful tool when it comes to what we call research and literature review. I think, can you comment on that, Mr. Morisawa?
Yes, that's a very intriguing question, sir. And well, one issue I would have is that the user would have had to clear the rights for those journal texts beforehand, because although users can upload their own text, they must have the full rights to do so. And some journal publishers do not necessarily grant textual mining rights, even if they provide the content. So that will be a little point of concern. But as long as those barriers are cleared and the permission is granted, I totally agree with you. It will be a very, very intriguing analysis to conduct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
You're
sir.
very concerned with the ethical side of research and the copyright of those material coming from the corporate side of things. But in academia, I mean, normally in academia, we also have those ethical practices
Yes.
in place.
Mhm.
Except that most of the database that we deal with, academic publisher, as
Yes.
long as you are doing it or using it for research purposes,
Mhm.
I think they are more than happy to share
Mhm.
or more than happy to allow you to use it.
Yes.
So, what kind of database,
Mhm.
going back to your Gale documents,
Mhm.
digital documents, in terms of academic
Mhm.
database, do
Mhm.
you all already have?
Yes, within the Digital Scholar Lab, we are actually limited to our primary source databases. So these will be historical newspapers or journals, not the current newspapers or periodicals journals. Although we publish journal databases separately, they are not part of the uh, data mining ecoverse of Gale Digital Scholar Lab. So we do have historical journals, which might be academic, but perhaps not the really current academic journals that you might be expecting.
I have something to add on to Prof's
Mhm.
question just now when
Yes.
he mentioned about academic type of journals,
Mhm.
because we do see that you highlighted historical texts
Yes.
that were kind of your uh, highlight of the
Mhm.
product.
Mhm.
So I was just wondering, like, when trying to foresee
Mhm.
the trial or purchasing the license,
Mhm.
would there be a chance for us to check first
Mhm.
on what the institution has to offer?
Mhm.
Should they be available with Gale? Because I wouldn't want to be paying and then suddenly realizing my institution doesn't have any
Mhm.
subscription to
Mhm.
Gale. So
Oh yes, certainly. We have the information of all of all of our subscribers, obviously, and Mr. Santia will be very, very happy to discuss in more detail what is available from your institution and what is not, and what can be acquired.
all right, so I'm just going to uh, presume that we contact Mr. Sean,
Yes.
and then to find out before we do decide on whether to go forward with purchasing it.
Yes,
All
certainly.
right, awesome. Thank you so much.
And you can also do a trial as well before deciding to purchase. So you can make sure that the content is really relevant to your needs as well. Mhm.
For all participants of the MCRN symposium, I think they will get a trial copy later on, if I'm not mistaken.
Sean, can you confirm that?
We are trying to work on that. But
Okay.
Anis has something to add. Anis?
I think you're muted.
You're muted, Anis.
I'm so sorry about that. Always
No problem.
happens. Okay, good evening, good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Anis from University Kebangsaan, Malaysia. So as Prof. Imran has mentioned earlier, I'm going to share my screen first. Okay, so this, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Right, so this is the upcoming event of Center for Research of Language and Linguistics of Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, University Kebangsaan, Malaysia. We will be organizing the Malaysian Corpus Research Symposium in collaboration with Gale and also supported by the Malaysian Corpus Research Network. Okay, with the team Corpus Linguistics for Digital Humanities. Okay, we also have our convener here, Prof. Dr. Imran Ho. Thank you for coming, for attending. And we are now calling for abstract with the themes literacy, cognition, translation, national development. We also have visual informatics, and not restricted to just corpus linguistics, but more to digital humanities, including education, medical, and there are important dates as well there. Call for abstract. We have promoted our symposium during last MCRN's workshop in April. So now the deadline for abstract submission is actually on the 22nd of July 2022. And abstract submissions notification will be done on 31st of by 31st of August 2022. So as you can see in the poster there, the abstract templates, if many of you are wondering, the normal template abstract for symposium. So if you're interested to submit your abstract, you can email us at the, with the email, mcrs2022.ucam@gmail.com. Okay, and if you have any questions at all, you are free to contact me, Anis, and also Prof. Imran, also Dr. Azhar Jaludin from UKM. All right, so like Prof. Imran said, hopefully we'll be using, or all of the participants will be given trial version of Gale later on after the symposium.
That's a good way to promo, Prof. I must say. It's really interesting and it's very exciting. Can't wait for that to happen, Masaki and Sean as well. I would also just to, on the note of using the digital data tools, one of the challenges of digital humanities, we are also excited to welcome a Corpus developer that will be sharing his talk next month. This is Mike Scott for Wordsmith tools. Maybe I don't know, Gale would be interested to listen in. So that's just something that I remember. Thank you. Can't wait for the symposium, and thanks again.
All right, so I guess that's for today's webinar, and thank you, Anis, for sharing about the MCRS, the symposium. All right, and before that, I think I would like to share with all of you as well regarding on our next July workshop. All right, which I have shared the pre-registration link. Okay, for our July workshop will be on the 29th July 2022. It is on getting to grips with Wordsmith by the developer, of the Wordsmith tools, Michael Scott. So I hope that I can see all of you who are present today for our next webinar as well, or for our next workshop. So I'd like to say thank you so much for everyone thank you for attending the MCRN monthly webinar, and I wish to see all of you for the next one in July. So I'll see you there. And thank you so much again, Mr. Masaki Morisawa, for the, I would say, insightful and very informative session that you have shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a great honor, and I hope some of it was helpful. Thank you so much for offering this opportunity.
Indeed, it was. Oh, if you don't mind, perhaps for those who are here, if you would like to open your camera, then we can have a photography session.
Oh.
All right. So for those who like to open their camera, please do open your camera.
It's become a trend now. I don't know if that ever occurs over there, but they only turn on their cameras for this particular moment of the webinar.
I love this, actually. It's a great
Really?
idea. Yes.
All right.
All right. Okay. So if everyone's ready, all right. So in the count of 1, 3, yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right. One more. 1, 2, 3. All right. Okay. It's good enough. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. So I hope to see you in the
Thank you. Thank you, Masaki.
Thank you so much.
Sean,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone,
for hosting.
Sharing
Have a
this.
nice weekend.
Bye. Happy weekend.
Bye.
happy
Happy weekend. Thank you so much.